deals, the trends, the how do you do it, the what went wrong. We're going to hear from a great cross-section of speakers. We're also going to hear about a new New South Wales government export scheme. And we'll also, of course, be taking your questions in the Q&A box on your Zoom account or your webinar account. Just pop them in the Q&A. At about 15 minutes in, I'm going to start taking a look at those and take the most of the opportunity. Also, this event is being recorded, so you can watch it later. A link will be provided, but it's also being streamed on YouTube. That covers off on some of the administrative tasks for the official opening. I'm going to hand over now to Toshi Kawaguchi, Director of International Education and Study New South Wales at Investment New South Wales. Thanks, Toshi.
Thank you very much, Helen, and for agreeing to host today as well. We're delighted to have you. Before I begin, can I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I am today, the Gadigal of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. On behalf of the New South Wales Government, I would like to also thank our delivery partner today, the New South Wales chapter of the Australia-Indonesia Business Council. And I'd like to take a moment to formally introduce our panelists today. So we're delighted to have Dr. Gerald Arif, Vice Rector and Deputy Vice Chancellor for Assurance, Operations and Planning at Asia Cyber University in Indonesia, Ms. Cherie Diaz, who is the Managing Director, Australia for Open Learning, Puk Rolando Majid, who is a committee member, ANPS and Director of Operations of Mutiara Harapan Islamic School, and Puk Aditya Hadi Pratama, writer and journalist at Tech in Asia. So we thank you all for giving up your time today and for sharing your expertise. While I have the floor, I thought it would also be useful to offer a little context on Investment New South Wales, the agency that I represent. So Investment New South Wales promotes New South Wales as a safe and attractive place to do business. A key enabler for Investment New South Wales is having New South Wales representatives across the globe through our Global New South Wales strategy to help attract investment and, importantly, and why we are here today, to facilitate trade opportunities for New South Wales businesses. Our Portfolio Minister is Minister Stuart Ayres, who will be familiar to many of you, given his strong advocacy to build bridges between New South Wales and the rest of the world. I think it's also important today to recognise that we meet as Indonesia continues to battle COVID-19, and we stand solemnly with Indonesia and the Indonesian people. We are confident, however, in the ability of the Indonesian government and its people to act quickly, responsibly and effectively to contain COVID-19. We are mindful of those joining our meeting from Indonesia today, and we extend our thoughts to you and hope you are safe and remain healthy. Indonesia, of course, is the largest economy in Southeast Asia with a large population and high rates of internet access and rising needs for education and training. Indonesia's EdTech industry, in fact, was predicted to grow by almost 25% annually from a value of $112 million in 2019. COVID-19 has accelerated the online learning trend, and this is expected to have a lasting impact, even as face-to-face learning returns. The Indonesian government is seeking to add 57 million skilled workers to the economy by 2030. And New South Wales has a high-quality education sector that is well positioned to assist Indonesia's growing education needs. Investment New South Wales is revitalising and increasing our presence in Indonesia, and our new Trade and Investment Director in Jakarta will commence in November 2021, next month. I'm also delighted that we now have our first ever presence in Indonesia who is 100% dedicated to supporting our international education engagement with the country. Her name is Mananda Churaman, or Nanda for short, and Nanda only recently commenced in her role, but is already having a great impact on the ground. She'll also be presenting today. Both our offices are co-located with the Office of the Australian Trade and Investment Commission, or Austrade, in Jakarta. And we are looking forward to supporting New South Wales companies to do business in Indonesia. And today we are launching our Going Global Export Program, and that'll assist New South Wales EdTech businesses to enter Indonesia. New South Wales' strong technology and innovation credentials position us as an ideal partner for Indonesia to drive forward its economic growth agenda. And Nanda will talk about this in more detail in her session. I do offer my sincere apologies to those online, as unfortunately I am unable to stay for the whole session. You are in excellent hands with Helen and our esteemed panelists. I anticipate that the fruits of this discussion today will be very valuable and foster closer ties between New South Wales and Indonesia and deliver valuable economic benefits for our communities. So now it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Indonesia's new Consul General to New South Wales, Queensland, and South Australia, Pukvidi Kernia Buwanu. So, Consul General, I'll hand over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tosi. It's very nice to see you again. And of course, we have here Ibu Nanda as the New South Wales Associate Director of International Division in Jakarta. Ms. Dai Robinson, Chair for Australia-Indonesia Business Council, New South Wales. And also, of course, Moderator Ms. Helen Brown. And also our speakers or panelists or para pembicara pada siang hari ini, Pak Aditya, Mr. Aditya Pratama, Banking Asia, also Mr. Rolando Majid, Committee Member, and PS, Director of Operations of Mutiara Harapan Islamic School, Ms. Terry Diaz, Managing Director Australia for Open Learning Limited, and also Dr. Gerald Arif, Vice Director, Deputy Vice Chancellor for Assurance, Operations, and Planning at Asia Cyber University. Distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Of course, indeed, I have the honor and pleasure to deliver remarks in today's webinar, EdTech, Innovation in Education and Training, Developing Partnership Opportunities between New South Wales, Australia, and Indonesia. I want to begin by commending the NSW Investment and Trade and also the AIBC New South Wales for organizing this important event. First of all, allow me also to convey Indonesia's appreciation to Australia for its continued support throughout this pandemic. While Indonesia is doing everything that we can to mitigate the impact of COVID-19, it is still not enough without the support and assistance of our partners, including one of our close neighbors, Australia. I would also like to acknowledge the AIBC New South Wales, which have been valuable assets for us in accelerating trade and economic cooperation, in having New South Wales, Australia be a hub for Indonesian product to other global market. Ladies and gentlemen, amidst COVID-19, I'm pleased to say that Indonesia-Australia bilateral relations remain strong, and our two countries have continued to talk and work together to make sure that bilateral cooperation remain active and strong. With the Indonesia-Australia Closer Economic Partnership Agreement commencing in July 2020, it marked a new chapter for a more vibrant and robust economic relations between Indonesia and Australia. The past year has presented a unique challenge for Indonesia and the rest of the world in mitigating the negative impact of COVID-19. However, I believe that amidst the challenge posed by the pandemic, the implementation of IACPA provide potential ways to further assist Indonesia and Australia's economic recovery. In line with the topic of today's session, allow me to give you a brief snapshot of Indonesia's digital economic potential, which I believe all of you are aware already. Despite this ongoing pandemic, Indonesia has shown resiliency and has managed to continue attracting major global tech giants such as Tesla, Google, and Amazon. Digital economy is on the priority list of our government. With half of our country's population below 30 years old, they are young and tech-savvy, and the key driver for customer market that focus on the digital customer experience. Indonesia is also home to 5 out of 9 Southeast Asian unicorn startups, value more than $1 billion US, and also one Indonesia first Decacom is Gojek. Of course, our digital economy is projected to be $130 billion US by 2025 and will contribute massively to the national economy as well as drive the nation's startup ecosystem. As all we are aware, the pandemic had led us into crisis, cutting people-to-people connection and businesses. As a result, the pandemic has also increased the demand for Internet of Things, IoT. We need the ability to connect, to work, and to learn without being physically together, just like we do today. Innovations in digital technologies have enabled these activities continue during the pandemic. The disruption has resulted in an increase of platform and content innovations within the education sector by both the government and the private sector. Due to the pandemic, Indonesia's 60 million students are adapting to remote learning and online classes. Currently, education technology is daily routine in Indonesia. According to 2018 Global Education Census by Cambridge International, Indonesia students are found to use technology in classroom more than many other countries, often beating even more developed countries. Indonesian students are among the world's highest in their use of computer room, reaching 40%, and they are also second highest in the world for using desktop computers, reaching 54%, behind only the USA. More than two-thirds of 67% of Indonesian students use smartphone in class, and even more, reaching up to 80% use smartphone to do their homework. Indonesian students also nearly tied with the USA for the highest use of laptops to do their homework. It is not surprising that Indonesia have seen an increase of success for education technology startups such as Ruang Guru, Zenius, Haruka Edu, Pahamify, and so on. Ruang Guru, for example, have reached more than 20 million users across Indonesia in December 2020, which was an increase of 46% from December 2019. Pahamify has grown fifthfold in 2020 due to the increased demand of online learning during the pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, it is clear that Indonesia's education technology potential and demands are immense, and it is open the possibility to expand its content to other segments, particularly vocational training for professionals and the digitalization of school. The Jakarta market, specifically, the highest EdTech penetration with the vast majority of EdTech firms focus their products on Jakarta as one of the most populous cities in Indonesia. As I understand, Jakarta in New South Wales at the moment is in discussion to reintegrate the memorandum of understanding on sister province, sister states between New South Wales and Jakarta. And I hope that under the MOU, we can explore more potential collaboration within this EdTech sector. Our team at the Consulate General, ITPC, Trade Promotion Center, Indonesian Investment Promotion Center, stand ready within our capacity, of course, to support further collaboration in developing partnership opportunities between New South Wales, Australia, and Indonesia. I wish all of you to have a productive session today, and I hope that today's webinar session will provide broad and impactful insights to the opportunities that lies ahead in New South Wales, Australia, and Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you, Bapak Bedi, Consul General of the Republic of Indonesia for New South Wales, Queensland, and South Australia. Terima kasih banyak, ya Pak. So, before we go to the panel, we're going to take some photos, and we're going to take 3, which means you all have to look amazing each time we take a photo, because I'm not sure who's on the page. So let's do that quickly. Get our best photo faces on, and I'll let you know for each photo. Okay, photo number 1 coming up now. 1. Number 2. And number 3. I think we're clear on that. Just checking. Yeah, great. Thank you. That's easier than trying to get everyone on stage like the old days. All right, now to our panel discussion. And before we go and meet our speakers, I just wanted to remind you of a few interesting things about Indonesia education and the technology market. Indonesia has the fourth largest education system in the world, 50 million students, that's in the primary and secondary as we know it, and 4 million teachers. Now, in that area, student learning standards do lag on the global index and against other nations in Asia. But as you heard from Bapak Vedi, there is a strong aspiration to improve individual learning and group learning, but individually they do want to improve. So that's a huge opportunity. By 2030, Indonesia will need 113 million skilled workers, and it's a national government priority to add 57 million skilled workers between now and then. So as you can see, a big task, but one that they're very dedicated to. This means they'll need an extra roughly 3.7 million of those skilled workers a year to fill the gap, and that's particularly in the higher level capabilities such as critical thinking, problem solving, and of course, technical adaptation. Indonesians move to online education when it is available. As we also heard, they're doing homework on their phones. And it has to be at a price point and a design that meets their needs. And we're going to hear about that from our speakers today. The coronavirus pandemic has created shifts that will stay in the EdTech industry as well. All right, with that sort of in your heads, let me now quickly go through our wonderful panelists again. Dr. Gerald Arif, co-founder of the online education learning platform Haruka Edu, one of the pioneers in the field of online education in Indonesia. And he's now moved to an academic role at the Asia Cyber University, Indonesia's first full online private university, established a year ago by the Vice President of Indonesia. He still advises to Haruka Edu. Ms. Cherie Diaz has 15 years of experience in education, currently based in Sydney. She is the Managing Director, Australia, of Open Learning, a well-known online learning portal. Now, prior to joining Open Learning, Cherie was the Head of Education Delivery at the Australian Institute of Company Directors, where she led faculty engagement, education delivery, director CPD, and lifelong learning. And she's also worked in the fields of education, technology, in the public, corporate, vocational, and postgraduate areas. So all those boxes are ticked. Rolando Majid is a committee member of the Association of National and Private Schools in Indonesia. He joined that in 2019. He'll tell us a bit more about that in a moment. He's worked in the field of education for more than 10 years and currently holds the role of Director of Operations of Mutiara Harapan Islamic School, overseeing 2 schools located in Jakarta and Bangka in Indonesia. He's also an Australian University alumni. And Pak Aditya Hadi, a seasoned tech writer who joined Tech in Asia in 2015, around the same time as the emergence of e-commerce giants. Surely you've heard of them: Gojek, Tokopedia, Traveloka. This was about a year after I left, yeah, Mas Aditya. So you got there, you got in writing at a really good time. He's got a strong network in the startup and media ecosystems in Indonesia, with research and analysis on education technology players such as Ruang Guru and Xenius and their investors. And he's going to give us some great insights into what's happening on that side. Okay, and with that, I would actually like to go to Aditya for the first question to help us with this idea of what's going on in this dynamic country. Aditya Hadi, thank you so much for joining us today. Could you map out for us what the EdTech industry looks like now in Indonesia?
I see. Thank you, Helen. But maybe just for a brief introduction, maybe just in case there are some of you who haven't heard about my company, Tech in Asia. We are an online media community and also event producer that focusing on startup ecosystem in Asia, including China, India, Middle East, but especially in Southeast Asia. And we also covered some startup from Australia too. So yeah, I live in Jakarta, but as you can guess from my background, I currently stay in Bali. So in general, I mostly cover Indonesian startup, like Helen said, Ruang Guru, Xenius, Haruka Edu, Pahamify, and everything. And I joined Tech in Asia in 2015. I think that's the time when education technology is started to gain some grounds in Indonesia startup landscape. Ruang Guru just founded around that time, and Haruka Edu also still 2 years old, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe Mr. Gerald can correct me if I'm wrong. And yeah, since then, education technology has evolved tremendously, and hope I can share the story to all of you in these sessions. So I want to share you some slide. Okay, can you saw my slide? Okay, I think so. Yeah. Okay, so this is the landscape of Indonesia EdTech sector that we made in Tech in Asia. So it shows prominent players, but it doesn't show everyone. So there are more companies, there are more players beyond this name and logos. Maybe the start of the journey of education technology landscape in Indonesia starting in 2013 until 2015, when players like Haruka Edu start with the enterprise training platform, and also some learning management system also growing up in the country. And Ruang Guru actually started at the similar years, but they started with offline tutoring marketplace. So that kind of sector is not really available nowadays, but Ruang Guru started with that things in the past. And I think around 2018, Ruang Guru decided to pivot, to change their business model to a business model that really kind of crowded in Indonesia nowadays, which is the online learning platform for K-12, where they create like a pre-recorded videos and people can subscribe and then watch the video everywhere and every time, something like that. So Ruang Guru moved to that space in 2018. Actually, prior to that, Zenius, another player in Indonesia, also has started similar things, but they face some slow growth in the past, but changed to there is a management change in 2019, and they evolve suddenly to a high growth startup and get 20 million US dollar funding from North Star Group in 2019, and then they compete with Ruang Guru, and also there are some other players in the space of focusing on K-12 students. And around at the same time, there are many startups that also tackle the problem in vocational training. They provide platforms that can help people who want to learn new skills to maybe increase their knowledge or experience that can be beneficial for their career path. We have Haruka Edu with a platform called Pintaria here, and also Ruang Guru actually expanded into this sector with Skill Academy platform, and there's Mau Belajar Apa and other platform who get a tipping point in 2020 amid the pandemic, because the Indonesian government provided an incentive for people who want to learn new skills called Prakerja program. This is an incentive that with a value like 1.4 billion US dollar only in 2021. So it's a very huge number that can be like many players here can take advantage, something like that. And deep down on that, there are some players who take benefit of the increment of the number of startups here in Indonesia. So the demand of the tech talents, people who are expert in programming, in tech infrastructure, in data analytics also increasing. So there are some players who provided like programming courses or technical courses such as Hactifake and Binar Academy with various business model. A business model that very interesting to me is some platform provided their courses for less price or maybe even for free, but the people need to pay the full price by sharing their salary after they got accepted by some tech players. So they don't need to, so they can study now but pay later, something like that. And the new trend that expanding in Indonesia is actually the something that we call in Tech Indonesia EdFintech, or Education's Finance Technology. So players like Cicil, Fintech, Danacita, and also Coinworks provide like a loan for people or students who want to increase their skills, or maybe using like K-12 platform, online learning platform, something like that. This is a very interesting thing, especially in Indonesia, where many people are actually unbanked or underbanked. So people here cannot just go to the bank and ask for loan. Oh, I want to attend some courses and everything. They cannot do that. So players here, like the education finance players, trying to provide that kind of solutions for people who want to learn, and then they can pay it like in monthly basis, something like that. I think that's the beginning. Maybe we can explain more in the further discussions with other panelists. So come back to you, Helen.
Lovely. Thank you, Aditya. That's great. That gives us something really good to start with. As you can see, an amazing landscape already. And in terms of finding customers and holding on to them, some interesting innovations being used there. We will go back to that. I wanted to bring Dr. Gerald Arif into this conversation as someone who built Haruka Edu from 2 employees to 300. User numbers went from, well, I guess 0. It's around 2.5 million now, partly thanks to that government program during the pandemic. But Dr. Gerald, thank you so much for your time. As you sit here looking at the landscape, are you surprised by how much it's growing, how fast it's moving, and the direction it's going in, or you're not surprised at all?
Thank you, Helen, first of all, for inviting me to this event. It was a very nice surprise for us that COVID came. It's very unfortunate because we are all locked down in our individual homes and countries, and so many people died unnecessarily, but it really helped to accelerate the importance of online learning because nobody's allowed to go on campus. So if COVID did not come, I think we would not experience the exponential growth that we had over the last 2 years.
So that means then that the shift is occurring. I mean, it's occurring in other countries, but it's definitely occurring in Indonesia. What shape will that take as we come to a different kind of way of living after the coronavirus? Will people still expect as much to be available online?
Definitely. I think as we can see in the non-education sectors, especially e-commerce, which has grown significantly, people are spending a lot of time, especially the younger generation, Gen Z, Gen Alpha. They're playing on their phone, they're buying stuff, selling stuff on their phone, chatting. My 2 kids are basically stuck to their phones, and I have to replace their phones almost on a yearly basis because the battery just keep on dying out, right? So everything is being done online, and I think it's not an option anymore for higher education institutions to go back to the old Stone Age Socratic method of coming to a physical campus moving forward.
Thank you very much. Great chance to bring in Ms. Cherie Diaz from Open Learning, because Cherie, that higher education sector is something that you're particularly looking at. Could you explain what you're doing in Indonesia?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Helen. So for those that aren't as familiar with Open Learning, we're an Australian company. We were founded in Sydney in 2012 and we listed on the stock exchange in 2019. We've now grown to more than 3 million learners globally, and we work with 190 education providers, and that's everything from small professional learning organisations, vocational and higher education providers, right through to universities and government departments as well. Interestingly, 80% of our learners are actually offshore, so they're not based in Australia. In terms of our markets, our key market from a partnership perspective is Australia and Southeast Asia, and we have our head office in Sydney. We have a regional office in Malaysia, And we've been expanding into Indonesia as well. So we now have 3 team members in Indonesia. It is of note that the partnerships and the organizations we're working with in Indonesia is in the higher education space. And for us, that was part of the, I guess, strategic review as to what are the opportunities in Indonesia and who we partner with, because there is so many different organizations and potential partners that we chose to focus on higher education and initially with a number of universities as a starting point. The areas that we are working with those partners does span, particularly in the short course and micro-credential space. As you know, it's been discussed a number of times today, there's a large need for upskilling and reskilling within Indonesia. And there is a component as well of the accredited courses that universities are providing. So the Open Learning platform spans both accredited and non-accredited. We call ourselves a lifelong learning platform. So for some of our partners, we are being used as their learning management system, and for others, it's as a short course and micro-credential platform and marketplace as well.
So, Cherie, how do you work with with universities? Do you help them design content? Are you finding a market for them? Are you going into universities in Indonesia, for instance, and seeing how you can work with them?
Yes, so there's, to a certain extent, it's all of those options. And that's one of the, I guess, points of difference for open learning and how we do extend into new markets such as Indonesia is we take great care in understanding the market that we're working with and the different challenges they have, as well as being flexible in the types of partnerships that we create, because we do go into each partnership with the view of it being a long-term partnership. So understanding what the needs are and that sort of thing. If I look at the partnerships, I guess the way we've approached it is the initial entry point, if for lack of a better phrase, was via our regional office in Malaysia, just from a proximity perspective. But I think one of the key learnings is, as much as the network and the support, and I do have to call out, you know, the AIBC and the AIC from a support perspective in the traction we've had to date, is that having that local knowledge and team members available to build that rapport and enable our partnerships locally is a point of difference for us as to, you know, having those initial conversations and actually moving into implementation and embedding our partnership as well does help. So the way we work is there's our platform and it can be used as a self-serve capability, but in some instances we also help with course development and design and that sort of thing as well. We make an effort to keep costs as low as possible. So in saying that, you know, there's a range of free resources from a learning design perspective and facilitation perspective. Our customer success team is global to provide 24/7 support. So I think one of the pieces, particularly for education providers and EdTech companies, is looking at how you can provide tailored support where it's needed, but also how you're able to scale your support so that you're able to keep the costs down as much as possible for your partners.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Cherie. A lot of interesting talking points raised there. So do remember, if you have a question, to put it in the chat box and we'll pick it up and put it to the panelists. Rolando Majid, I'd like to go to you next. We've been talking about the higher education sector, but as a committee member on the Association of National and Private Schools in Indonesia, you've got some very good insight into that higher end of the market. What are the demands for tech solutions or online education in that market at the moment?
Okay, good morning, Helen, and good day, everyone. So I'm here today representing INPS. So allow me to introduce a bit about INPS. So we're an association of national and private schools in Indonesia. We're a non-profit organization of Indonesian schools, specifically in K-12 education area. And then our community of management runs by mostly school management level, from principal, director, and school owner. We have member around 7,200 schools every year. Number might change because our membership needs to be renewed every year. For ANPS itself, we had three major objectives. First is to advance the interest of national school throughout Indonesia. And second, to provide varied professional development opportunities for teachers and administrators employed by ANPS schools. And third one is to present national schools to government and the external community. So definitely there's a growing demand for high-end or tech solution for schools in Indonesia, because due to this pandemic, it's a very eye-opening for schools, most schools, because basically most of schools are not prepared yet for this tech. There is a growing demand before pandemic. We can see from there's so many EdTech and then GS conference happen to support the growth of EdTech in Indonesia, but somehow only few schools adopt the technology, because somehow technology is still something luxurious for schools in Indonesia. Not many schools can afford and adapt, but definitely there's a growing numbers. And then during the pandemic, the numbers just increased because teachers are not prepared, schools are not prepared, even students and parents, they're not prepared for it.
So is there some catch up going on now, Rolando? And are there people looking for local solutions or international solutions, or what's the trend in terms of how far they want to go with dealing with the changes brought by the pandemic?
Okay, as mentioned before, that Indonesia, we have a very big market size. We have more than 400,000 schools from K-12, including special education, vocational schools. We have 3.4 million teachers and then 60 million active students in Indonesia. So there's plenty of needs and demands for technology. But great to know that at the beginning of pandemic, our government, Ministry of Education and Culture, they work with private sector hand in hand to giving free training to push online learning to make it happen to school, because we know that there's still many problem in terms of infrastructure, internet connection in some of the area in Indonesia. Probably only those schools who are in major cities, they benefit from the technology and like EdTech consumption, because as mentioned also before, that many schools just using WhatsApp group for learning, for sharing materials and assessment, and then many of them only manage to meet online once a week at the beginning of pandemic. But now due to many available online trainings, free trainings around Indonesia, I think now it's getting better in terms of our online learning, because at the beginning, yes, teachers are not trained for sudden changes. Even students, they are not prepared for online learning and self-study or independent learning. Even parents, they are not familiar with online learning, and they keep on expecting to be back for on-site learning.
Okay, so there's still some learning for everybody,
Yeah.
which is maybe difficult to digest, because I think we're all a bit tired of new learning after 2 years of it. But it's a good point to make, that thinking about what you provide has to also be something that people feel comfortable, that they can use, that they can be successful with, that will actually help them and move them away from what they've known before. Gerald, with that in mind, I think an important point has been raised too around the infrastructure and the internet infrastructure, that it isn't evenly available across the archipelago. There are, of course, great plans to build better internet connectivity, but that hasn't happened at the moment. And that students have been using WhatsApp chat groups to learn and do their work. And for Australians who haven't been to Indonesia, WhatsApp is the tool for communication for just about everything. So, you know, if you're not on it, you're missing out on a lot. How do you factor that in? If you're looking at, you have an education technology solution and you have done this yourself, how do you factor in that internet access is patchy outside the major cities?
Yeah, so supporting what Pak Rolando was saying, basically, even though Indonesia is 3 time zone countries, you do have to pick and choose which areas of markets that you can serve. In all the capital cities, provincial capital cities, they will have a reasonably decent internet connection and affordable mobile internet connection. But outside, in the suburbs, especially outside Java, that is a really big challenge to reach out to those students. I mean, I have students in Papua who sometimes have to go to the nearest mountains in order to get signal to learn something, to have a video conference. So every company, including EdTech or non-EdTech who are serving this sector, will have to be careful to select which geographics are sufficiently supported by affordable mobile internet infrastructure. So just adding to that, Asia Cyber University is also serving basically not only nationwide, but global Indonesian-speaking students. But again, we do have to pick and choose based on those 2 factors.
And tell us a little bit more about this cyber university, this new cyber university, which if I'm correct, is based on something that exists in South Korea.
Yeah, so we were established just over a year ago, so we're still crawling, baby crawling. And we were fortunate to have been opened by the Indonesian Vice President. The reason of this university's establishment is basically to help Indonesia play a catch-up game compared to our neighbors in ASEAN. We're even lower in terms of participation for higher education. I mean, from a total 150 million or so registered laborers, we have only about 8 or 9%, which is a lot lower than even Vietnam. So the challenges in getting our workforce to be educated, which is key if you want to grow any countries, you will have to provide affordable, flexible access of education. So our fee is super affordable. It's only 3 million rupiah for 1 semester. So basically for a 4-year full bachelor's online degree, you only have to pay less than $2,000 with no additional charges. Right? So we maintain the quality of learning and we maintain the regulatory compliance in Indonesia, which is very dynamic, as anyone in the EdTech or even non-EdTech industry can appreciate in order to help build the workforce.
Thank you. That's really good to know. And I think you just sent some shivers down the spines of some people with that price point. Are you trying to attract customers at this stage? That's the main goal?
Basically, the market is so huge. And the comments that I get firsthand from industry leaders and industry association is, and you can look at the McKinsey report that started the startup that I built before, that there is a significant lack of human capital in every level of any company, from the most junior staff all the way to like C-suite levels, because the workforce in Indonesia is just not educated sufficiently. So I think until we solve that problem, which in this case is an opportunity for everyone who's trying to get into the tech sector, Indonesia will continue to be stuck in a rut, unlike its more educated neighbors.
Thank you. Let's go to Aditya and find out what kind of funding these EdTech companies are attracting. I mean, they're facing the challenge of patchy internet connectivity and sounds like some price points which are pretty low. So, Aditya, are these products and services and new companies popular, and why, given those challenges?
Yeah, maybe I just want to share some perspective here, and I agree with what Pak Gerald said about when a startup want to maybe a founder want to build a company in Indonesia, especially at tech companies, or maybe foreign players want to come to Indonesia, they have to clearly choose their target. First, in terms of geography, which geography that they want to target, and the other one is the metrics, what kind of metrics that they want to target. So I just want to give you some example. So if anyone checking maybe third-party analysis, for example, App Annie, and they're checking, they want to know which players in Indonesia, which EdTech player in Indonesia that get the most downloads or the most active user numbers. The answer is not Ruang Guru, is not Zenius. Number one is Google Classroom. Number two is Brandly. Brandly is come from Poland. The number three is Kanda. Kanda is come from South Korea. So these foreign players can come to Indonesia and become number 1, 2, and 3 players in the country, but that based on the downloads and active user numbers. But if you count it based on revenue, local players such as Ruang Guru and Zenius is leading their pack, because the main offering is the subscription, right? So everyone who want to use the platform need to subscribe or pay first, something like that. So the revenue may be bigger than other competitors. Even with the only, I think, 22 number of students from 60 million in total, Ruang Guru has been profitable in the financial report in 2020. So the condition is with just focusing on a certain number of a certain sector of education, a company can be profitable, and it become the main attraction of investors around the world, where many startup still like burning money or something like that. So the question is, with the patchy, even with the patchy internet, Indonesian EdTech companies, especially the local companies, can still grow their numbers in terms of revenue, in terms of users and everything. But we have to realize that there is other things that Pak Gerald and Pak Rolando also tell us, that there is some part of Indonesia that the internet is patchy. They cannot, maybe even they cannot use computer or smartphone. This is still a homework for, and there is a large population in that area, in that market. So there is another market that can be tapped either by the local players and also by the foreign players. I think that's Helen.
Thank you, Aditya. That's great. Thank you. And we have a question from the audience, and I think Cherie, you might be able to help with this. And to the other panelists, please let me know if you'd like to respond as well. What are the challenges around assessment in the online space in Indonesia? For example, standardization of curriculum, online exams, etc. This has been a major problem in higher ed. For Australia, I'm guessing. I'm interested in how this is approached across the different education levels in Indonesia. Cherie, do you have any insights into that, given your experience in country? And then perhaps if the other panelists, just let me know if you'd also like to answer that.
Yeah, sure. So I can talk to a couple of examples, both from an exam perspective. I think, there's a number of different tools or providers out there in the online exam space, and they work and they function, and we integrate with a number of them through the open learning platform. I think one of the interesting learning processes that providers have gone through as part of COVID-19 has been what role and when do you use proctoring services as part of that exam provisioning? One of the pieces that we're most thrilled at Open Learning from a learning philosophy perspective is that it's actually accelerated the willingness for education providers to move away from exams as being such a dominant form of assessment within their curriculum and processes. So we're seeing, there's still a need for exams, there's still a place for them, but also that movement to portfolio-based learning, scaffolded or continuous assessment processes as well is gaining pace as a result.
Gerald, I expect you might have something to add.
Yes, I mean, there are so many tools available out there, as Sherry has shared. But again, the tools are only as good as the infrastructure that is available to do the live streaming, as well as the users. So those are the two big issues we face. You have really affordable tools, but if the internet connection is not there, and if the users are not familiar to implement the assessment, then we have to go back to basic to emailing or live streaming at a very, very low bandwidth.
Rolando, a different segment of the market, but in terms of that sort of assessment, have you seen anything that can help answer that question?
Probably can help from the K-12 perspective, because as mentioned before, yes, there's always a challenge when it comes to connections and then the bandwidth and everything. But what I know that the local EdTech usually when it's come to LMS, they're very customizable and adjustable. So that's I think one of the strengths that can support in terms of assessment at school.
Okay, thank you. Good question. We've been talking about different market segments, and it's obvious that there are quite a lot of different market segments in Indonesia where everyone's getting a handle on what's going on here. Aditya, are there any areas that aren't covered or aren't covered as well at the moment from the research that you've done?
I think the most uncovered market, as has been mentioned by Pak Gerard, Pak Rolando, I think is how we can help not only Indonesian people or Indonesian students in big city like Jakarta or urban area, but also the suburban area with limited internet connectivity. I think that's the if like Google has a 1 billion project, something like that, I think that's another billion project for Indonesian EdTech ecosystem, how to help those kind of people who can, there is a development from our government effort to increase the internet penetrations, but despite of that, I think this is a homework for EdTech players, either from local players or foreign players, to how to can still help them. I don't know, maybe in offline method, despite of the limitation of the internet. I think that's Helen.
Great, thank you. I'm going to shift the conversation a little bit now. I would like to find out from Sherry more about Indonesia as a source country. In terms of your collaboration with the University of New South Wales Foundation Studies Program, Sherry, just thinking about, obviously you've got some idea of grading and you've been working with them on that, but also as a different kind of pathway, really, for the learning that Aditya is talking about, for instance, these sort of basic skills that will help them go somewhere else.
Yes, great, thank you. So for everyone else, the UNSW Transition Program Online is a new iteration of a program that was running face-to-face for more than 15 years by UNSW Global, which is the international arm of the University of New South Wales. And it's a 4-month program that's an intensive program for international students that have just missed out on the entry criteria for their preferred undergraduate program in Australia, and primarily UNSW. But what the team at UNSW Global and Open Learning have done is they've built out an online first iteration of that program, and we explain it as it's not a COVID fix. It's not designed just until the borders reopen. It's the model of the program itself moving forward, which does a couple of things. One, it means that the learning experience, the learning journey, and all of the content and learning process has been built out to occur via the open learning platform. So a bit like the comment was made earlier about, the cost of the program. There's no other cost. There's no textbooks, all of that sort of piece, which I think is important. You have to factor in that all adds up as a student undertaking the program. But it also means that factoring in things like support hours, reducing the cost of living, the student doesn't have to be factoring 4 months of living expenses in Australia, but in completing that program, etc. It's meant that it's opened up a broader network or opportunity for the source countries that students are coming from. And particularly for this program, there has been an increase in interest and students from Indonesia itself. One thing, if I can extend from there into more broadly, one of the points that at Open Learning we often have with our prospective or existing partners who are using the platform for their learning delivery is there's a large amount of interest in expanding their provider reach into markets such as Indonesia or Southeast Asia. One of the key things that we do say is there is a lot of reach and there is a lot of potential, but pricing does play a huge part in the reach that course or program will have. And it's an important part to consider in the learning design approach, the cost of delivery model, that how do you balance out those factors in awareness that the scalability, if you do it right and get that mix right, there is a huge scale potential outside of Australia as well.
Okay, that's good. Thank you very much, Sheree. We have been talking about an Australian business that, say, goes into Indonesia or works with an Indonesian partner. And of course, when it comes to Indonesia, it's about building relationships. It's about understanding the culture of the country as much as, finding the best deal, so to speak. We've had a good question from the audience around that. Would the panel comment on cultural values around education in Indonesia? Which ones should we be aware of? So I'll go around our Indonesian panelists, and maybe Pak Rolando, could I start with you, please?
Yes. Okay. So when it's come to culture, I think the biggest problems when there's an overseas edutech is the language barrier. I think, of course, it will be much better if you have Indonesian reps or someone who can explain clearly about your product. Because when we talk about the opportunity to come to Indonesia, as mentioned, that we have a very large market, or you can just basically focus on the volume, because we have a lot of schools, students, or teachers that you can focus on depending on what EdTech product are you offering. And then we have a very wide segment from public school, local private to international school, or large. For the public school itself, we have a different sizing with the different government funds supported. As the numbers of students grow or bigger, of course, the fund is bigger. So they will be more able to purchase certain product. And then we also have a local teachers to international-minded teachers. We have local students, from local students to international-minded students or parents. Those are a very wide market segment that you can choose from. And as Pak Aditya present at the beginning, we have a growing number of edutech in Indonesia, but not many available yet. Okay, Mostly from my experience in K-12, they focus on LMS, SMS, and teachers development platform. As mentioned also before, we have big players such as Ruang Guru, Haruka Edu, or other prominent player there. But there's only a few who are focusing on like coding, robotic, learning platform, virtual lab, gamification, etc. But there's a really growing demand at the moment. You can see mentioned before, turns out the big three or the big four, it turns out from overseas when it comes to LMS, as mentioned before by Pak Aditya. So schools still looking for LMS, SMS, learning platform, apps that can support like green screen, coding, robotic, makerspace, 3D printers, virtual lab, STEAM education, and many more. When it comes to culturally, yes, again, I think language barrier might be the problems because international school populations last time registered only around 500 plus school registered at the Ministry of Education who got the license for international school compared to the whole population 400,000 plus schools in Indonesia. So if you want to penetrate the market, I think that will be good for you. And then another threat probably pricing. You have a challenge, and if you're competing with the local EdTech. I spoke before with Helen, like for LMS, they probably can charge like only $2 per student per month for using LMS. So that might be something to consider. And I suggest you focus on the volume because we have a large volume for students and those things. And then even type of product and specifications, that's also something that you need to consider because as mentioned about our internet connection and infrastructure, it's not equally spread. So I think the way of your product itself or the features, the heavy of graphic, like the bandwidth consumption, big data to download, that also something that if you can make a lighter version, that will be good. You probably can penetrate into a bigger market because most parents spend more in a smartphone or laptop with specification around 4 GB RAM. Only some can afford like 8 to 16 GB RAM because in my school we also experienced a bit when we moved from Zoom to Google for Education, like Google Class, Google Meet. There's some laptop having trouble because you need to shut down all the tabs in order for you to have a stable meetings. So those and the last one is also timing for entry to Indonesian market for Indonesian school because our school calendar starts on July. Most schools already set and locked their plan for budget in the second semester, mostly between March and June. So if you like to promote this better as soon as possible within the first semester because once the budget set, they don't have much flexibility to insert program in the middle of school year. I think that's all.
Thank you, Pak Rolando. That was like a comprehensive how-to. That was wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing that. But Gerald, what are your thoughts around culture of education systems in the country? How do you approach it? What else do you need to think about if you're an Australian company, for instance?
Yeah, so as Pak Rolando shared, the opportunity is so big because we have so many problems, right? Problems equals opportunities. I shared with you previously that even me, as an Indonesian, I just returned to Indonesia about 15 years ago after spending a long time in the UK. I'm still learning local cultures and local wisdoms and local customs, which can be very, very significantly different from province to province, island to island. So we do have to put on our anthropologist hat as we go and meet different people from different cultures in different regions so you do not accidentally insult the book, right? So we cannot just assume global mentality, because even in Indonesia, you will appreciate that some cultures are very Australian or Western-like. They're very straightforward. When they don't like you, they'll just, for example, some of my friends from Batak region, Sumatra, they're very straightforward. They don't like you, they tell you, right? Whereas some cultures, like in Central Java, if they don't like you, they will smile at you and say yes. And then you think that you already closed the deal, but for months and years, there's no response. And you're wondering, what did I do wrong? Right, so you do need to have a local person who understands the subcultures, not just assume, okay, you are Indonesian, let's just treat you like McDonald's, a Big Mac in every single country, is it all uniform? You cannot do that.
And Aditya, would you like to add to that?
Yeah,
Young tech person that you are.
yeah, I think I agree with what Pak Rolando, Pak Gerald comments about this. I think it's pretty much comprehensive, but I think from media perspective, I want to add several points. For example, in terms of product, I think Indonesians, especially the end user, usually like a product, a content, a materials that is easy to understand. If there is a visual of that, I think it's better, because like most Indonesian people, I think like a visual centric persons, and it's better if you can provide like short tricks for easier problem solving, how to make it better remember the learning material, something like that. And if there is a gamification aspect of that of your product, it's like a plus point. And I think from the business, I think Pak Rolando said about the timing when you should enter the market and everything. I think from what I saw from the like sort quote unquote like success education tech players here, I think they really understand the incentive of their target market. So for example, like Ruang Guru and Zenius, they in terms of like K-12 online learning platform, I think the biggest incentive for people who try and subscribe for that kind of platform is they hope the platform can help them to enter like prominent university, for example, public universities such as University of Indonesia, Bandung Institute of Technology, and others. I think that's the biggest incentive why the students want and the parents want to subscribe for that kind of service. And in Ruang Guru case, it boosted by heavy promotion on television, blocking a prime time slot in national TV almost every beginning of educational semester, and aggressive offline acquisition to schools. I think that's become a sweet spot for the startup. On the other side, in like the what I called like vocational training, there is also an incentive, especially in the pandemic, which Prakerja program, which is 1.4 billion US dollar incentive only in 2021. It's a huge incentive for players and also end users to use that kind of platform, and that's become the main advantage of that kind of platform. So if you want to enter Indonesia, maybe every company need to understand what kind of incentive, what kind of benefit that the users can get if they use your program. It really depends on like the culture in every province, or maybe the government regulation and everything. Really depends on that.
Great, thanks, Aditya. I think it's really important that you talk there about gaming. Kids are used to gaming, so that the learning is gamified. Also groups, they prefer to work in groups, so that was a bit of a challenge during the coronavirus, but things were set up so they could work in groups and not feel so alone. So those kind of things as well have to be factored in. It's a very different place, Indonesia, I think, to what most Australians would be used to. And it's a really good question to raise around thinking about what is the culture of this country and how would I fit into it if I decided to go down that path. we're running out of time, so if you'd like to ask a question, I'd suggest you sneak it in very quickly. I'm going to end by going around to the panelists and asking them for one top tip that they have that you should think about on EdTech and innovation in Indonesia. And I'm going to ask Cherie first as the Australian company in the room, and I'm going to keep talking to give her a minute to think about it because I have thrown this on them. But we've heard a lot today. There's a lot to take in, and I guess, you know, what's one thing you would be looking at first if you're thinking about EdTech in Indonesia? Cherie?
I'm struggling to just narrow it down to one, so I know it's really quickly.
Really.
So I guess a couple of things I would say is connect and use the organisations that are there to support you. You know, I've called out a couple of them already. Our team has found the Austrade team in Indonesia extremely helpful, and Investment New South Wales. I would also say, you know, there is so much potential, so go in a little bit more strategically about, you know, what region and what segment, so that you're not stretching yourself too thin and therefore not able to show, you know, what's your unique value proposition and support model to do that. And if I can just, one more is, one of our big learnings is that local knowledge and language is really important past that first meeting, particularly when you get into contract negotiations, as well as support. So, you know, the fact that we've got a team member based in Indonesia for that educator support and using the platform is needed from a longevity perspective as well.
That's excellent. Thank you very much. But Rolando, could I go to you next, please? You gave us such a great list before. I've probably exhausted it, but if you can pick out one of those, that would be good.
Thank you. So yeah, probably gonna repeating myself about this one. So I think please select your market wisely, because Indonesia, we have a very large market, but if I can suggest, just focus on the volume rather than setting a high price, because if you're setting a high price, it will be, there is a market, but like I mentioned, international schools, only around 500-ish registered at the MOEC. So I think better to focus on the larger market as well at the same time. So it will be easier also for you to be able to compete with the local EdTech. And then timing is also important. And if you can make a lighter version of your product, that will be much better.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mas Aditya, what would you say?
Yeah, I think I just want to reiterate what I said before about the understand the incentive of the users, what the appetite, what kind of what they want, about what the student wants, what the school wants, what the regulations say, what the government wants. So I met with many startup founders here in Indonesia who want to build like EdTech startups, but it just results in like a zombie product that not many people use and cannot survive, something like that. So I think it really depends. To know the incentive, you need to talk to as many as possible local stakeholders that you can find. I think Pak Gerald and Pak Rolando is the some people that you can talk to. So yeah, I think that's what I'm thinking.
It's a very good point, though. Know your customer very, very well. Yes. And finally, to you, Pak Gerald.
Yeah, so to take an Australian term, if you want to enter the Indonesian market, you have to be as fair income as possible, right? Because the people here, they will know if you are not fair income, if you just for the short term, they will see that, okay, this is just a drive-through effort. You just want to invest in the quick buck. So it requires long-term investment. And you do need to not only, I wouldn't say compete with the local startups, I would encourage to cooperate, right? Because like Sherry managed to build open learning just 1 year before we established, well, my previous startup, and already in less than 10 years already got IPO. That's not possible here because we just do not have the amount of professional investors who are willing to invest in risky ventures. So, but we have the local knowledge, we have the local understanding. So I would encourage to cooperate with local startups to do a win-win solution.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's a great tip to end on. That is the end of our panel discussion, and what a great conversation it's been. I've learned so much. I hope you have too. Let me thank our panelists. Dr. Gerald Ari, Vice Rector, Deputy Vice Chancellor for Assurance Operations and Planning at the Asia Cyber University in Indonesia, Ms. Cherie Diaz, Managing Director Australia of Open Learning, Pak Rolando Majid, Committee Member ANPS and Director of Operations of Mutiara Harapan Islamic School, and Pak Aditya Hadi Pratama, writer and journalist for Tech in Asia. And I agree, I do like Tech in Asia. It's got some great articles. So it's lovely to meet you, Aditya, and it's lovely to talk to all of you. Thank you very much for your time today. Now, we haven't quite finished because it's my great pleasure to introduce you to Bu Nanda. This is the New South Wales Associate Director for International Education in Jakarta, New South Wales Government's first dedicated position to promote the education sector to Indonesia. And Bu Nanda is going to say hello to you and have a few words. Thank you. Terima kasih ya, Bu.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Helen, and thank you all the panelists for the very insightful session today. It's a pleasure to virtually meet all of you today and to be part of this webinar. My name is Mainanda Chudahman. You can call me Nanda. I'm the Associate Director, International Education for Investment New South Wales in Jakarta. I'm based at Austrade Jakarta office, and I just joined the New South Wales team a couple of months ago in August 2021. Before we end this webinar, I'm going to share a bit about what we do and how we can support New South Wales businesses. Now I'm going to start sharing my screen. I hope you can see my slides. I'm going to cover a bit about New South Wales and Indonesia trade relationship, New South Wales government footprint in Indonesia, and the most exciting part, New South Wales Going Global Export Program, EdTech to Indonesia. New South Wales Indonesia two-way goods trade was worth 1.75 billion in 2019-2020, and the Australia services export to Indonesia was worth 1.32 billion 2019-2020, which included 988 millions worth of education-related services. Based on the UNESCO data before the pandemic, Australia was the #1 chosen study destination for Indonesian students. Australia was the most popular compared to other country destinations such as UK and US. As of October 2021, based on the visa data, out of all Indonesian students enrolled in Australia, 46% of them are choosing New South Wales as their destination in Australia. Indonesian EdTech is set for huge growth. It was worth 112 million in 2019 and is estimated to grow 24.9% yearly. New South Wales hosts 41% of all the total number of EdTech businesses in Australia. That means there are more than 240 EdTech businesses based in New South Wales. Technology and education are two out of the three key sectors for New South Wales government in Indonesia, alongside with agribusiness, food and beverages. This means that the New South Wales government is making these sectors as the key opportunity for New South Wales businesses in Indonesia. And Indonesia is one of the 4 key markets across ASEAN that the New South Wales government is prioritizing. Other countries are Vietnam, Singapore, and Malaysia. At the moment in Indonesia, there's only me, but hopefully I will be joined by a trade and investment director by next month. So my key roles at Investment New South Wales is to support New South Wales education providers and education-related business such as EdTech to penetrate Indonesia market and to secure commercial wins in Indonesia. I also deliver initiatives in market in Indonesia, and this Going Global program is one of the example. It aims to grow partnership and student recruitment to New South Wales from Indonesia and also to support internationalization of New South Wales education provider. I also engage with Indonesian key stakeholders, businesses, government to deliver New South Wales government priorities in education sector. So, how we can help New South Wales businesses? Now, we currently have 12 export advisors in New South Wales to help New South Wales businesses with export plans and to get market ready. We also have this New South Wales Export Assistant Grant Program. It worth up to $10,000 reimbursement for marketing and export development. This includes market research, participation in trade shows and missions, inbound business support, e-commerce development. And I have mentioned about the Going Global Export Program. And what is that program? The New South Wales Going Global Export Program is actually designed to support eligible New South Wales businesses to grow their international business. This program has been running since last year, and we have supported more than 150 New South Wales businesses since last year. New South Wales businesses can get benefits such as tailored export workshops, potential in market and virtual business introductions, coaching from a dedicated expert advisor, access in market support, and support from industry experts. I put the link here, so if you want to get more information about the program, you can access on our website. And I believe that these slides will be distributed to you after the webinar, so you can have a look later. And this one is the most exciting part, the upcoming opportunity for New South Wales EdTech. So we are going to run the New South Wales Going Global Export Program EdTech Indonesia. This program is aimed to support eligible New South Wales EdTech businesses, education training, learning and development tech type of segment to grow their international business and to expand their market to Indonesia. We got some criteria for this. So if you are a New South Wales EdTech and you have minimum 3 full-time employees, clear value and selling proposition relevant to Indonesia, proven capability, either domestic or global, including established customer base, proven technology, and also clearly defined business model, either B2B, B2C, or B2B2C, we are inviting you to apply for this program. And the good news is the application opens today, 27th of October, and the application will be open from today, 27th of October, until the 1st of December 2021. The program itself, it will run from mid-December 2021 to June 2022. So if you have any question about the program before you decide to apply for this, you can contact my colleague Lynn Teo. She's the Senior Associate Export Advisory in the new sectors, and I put here her email. And yeah, if you're interested and you want to apply, you can apply here on our website. I have put it here. Yeah, we look forward to have you applying for this program and yeah, to join the New South Wales Going Global Export Program EdTech in Indonesia. Well, that's it from me. Thank you for listening. And yeah, I'm going to hand over back to Helen. Oh yeah, but before that, if you have any more questions, please feel free to email us, let us know, and we'll try to get back to you. Okay, hand over to Helen. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
chatting while she's on mute. There you go. That presentation wowed me. I couldn't even get my unmute off. So Nanda, thank you so much. That's Nanda Chudaman, Associate Director of International Education with Investment New South Wales. And as she said, if you have any questions about that new program, please get in touch. That does end today's webinar. Thank you so much for your time and attention, questions. I hope it delivered some value to you. Again, I'd like to thank our fabulous panelists. I'd also like to thank Bapak Vedi, the Consul General of the Republic of Indonesia for New South Wales, Queensland and South Australia. And congratulations to Investment New South Wales and its delivery partners, the Australia-Indonesia Business Council and AFG Venture Group. Again, lovely to have your company, and I hope I can catch up with you again sometime in the near future.